Ukrainian pentathlete Pavlo Tymoshchenko has almost all titles and regalia of a world star in the collection of his rewards and achievements. He's a world and European champion and silver medal winner of the Olympic Games in Rio-de-Janeiro, but he still dreams of winning an Olympic gold medal. Favourite season? Spring. Zodiac sign? Libra. Favourite colour? Dark blue, because everything is dark blue. My main victory in life? I tell everyone that my victory is still ahead of me. Favourite movie? It's difficult to choose one of them. I have lots of favourite movies. Hobby? It constantly changes. I want to be engaged in everything. I'm always interested in something. Pavlo Tymoshchenko has been engaged in sports since his early childhood. His father also achieved great successes in the pentathlon, though both have truly made names for themselves only together, Pavlo as an athlete and Yuri as his son's coach. I always wanted to get into sports. I always followed the example of my father, and I never thought to be engaged in something else. I had lots of thoughts about my future, but initially I always wanted to become a professional athlete. After the end of his sports career, Yuri Tymoshchenko didn't even think of starting to work as a coach. It happened due to his son. When Pavlo was 11 years old, he practically forced his father to open courses for pentathlon for children. I almost do not remember it, so it is difficult for me to say. My father always says this. I went for this kind of sport with great pleasure. I remember when I was 12 years old, we had the possibility to visit an equestrian base, and I asked my father to go with me and speak to the director, Serhiy Menakov, who was already a merited individual. My father asked him several times to allow me onto the territory of the base as an additional visitor. So I visited it on Saturdays, and whenever I found some leisure time, I tried to get in there. The father as a trainer did not take note of his son's talent immediately, but the young Pavlo showed what he is capable of from an early age. They underwent many difficulties together, but the main thing is that they never gave up. Pavlo wanted to win at once, but his wise tutor advised him to wait for a while. If athletes are talented and at the same time they are lazy, they will never develop their talent to the fullest. But a hard-working person who has some kind of skills can achieve great success. Talented people never want to work hard. When such a person doesn't want to achieve something only because he has a talent, the talent remains only a talent. So my son is very responsible, very skillful and very hard-working. I don't have such a hard-working person as he is among my athletes. Pavlo Tymoshchenko started to earn victories almost from the start. He almost always won sports competitions in Kiev. When he took second place, it was a real tragedy for him. Truthfully speaking, I always wanted to win, but now I don't show it. This is a cherished dream of every athlete. This is one of the main features of every sportsman who wants to achieve something or has high ambitions in some kind of activity or wants to become better. I remember my experience. To win in competitions was my stimulus, but at the start I suffered misfortunes and I needed much time to overcome them. Pentathlon in our time is not the simplest sport and is definitely not cheap. It is unrealistic to swim, run, shoot, fence and ride in one place. Moreover, earlier competitions in all 5 disciplines were practically not held at the children's level. Nowadays this competition includes only running, shooting and swimming. I remember my teenage years when I participated in local championships. My athletes took part in them. At that time, my father trained about 10 athletes, so competition between us was very strong. Then we took part in the quadrathlon, including fencing. Now this kind of sport is being simplified. Athletes are engaged only in biathlon and triathlon. In our time, we participated in competitions that included 5 disciplines. Pavlo Tymoshchenko stood out among his competitors. He was quite thin and was not very athletic, but he always achieved high results owing to his athletic technique, will and character. If he was behind other athletes in running or swimming, he was better than them in shooting and fencing. I'm not so athletic and I don't have such physical abilities as my counterparts do. I was growing for a long time. I was stronger than them in technical disciplines. They yielded to me in shooting and fencing. I faced problems when I was almost 20 years old and older. It was more difficult psychologically to get into technical forms of sport. The requirements put to athletes constantly increased. So we have to show better results and work harder physically and more intellectually. Pavlo has his favourite and non-favourite pentathlon disciplines. He dislikes swimming and running, but it doesn't mean that he paid less attention and time to training in those disciplines as well. Fencing is a more interesting kind of sport for me because it's a game. Nevertheless, it is a difficult sport and athletes need to put more efforts to achieve good results in that discipline. Each of these 5 kinds of sport requires specific approaches, which are quite different. For that reason, it is very difficult to compare them. Of course, it can be boring and difficult to run every day, but at the same time, an athlete can show his abilities and endurance. He can test his patience in order to surpass himself, for example, by forcing himself to cover longer distances. There is no such notion in fencing. For fencers, this is not conceivable. The library of the Tymoshchenko's family includes a very popular series of books. Pavlo read a story of the only 3-time Olympic champion and 5-time champion of the world, from the beginning to end, with great fascination. Andros Balco, the outstanding Hungarian pentathlete of the 1960s and 70s, was a good example for me. Speaking about sports, I can say that there are a lot of good athletes who could be a good example for me. Of course, I always follow the examples of the most successful sportsmen in the history of sports. For example, I like Bjorn Dahlen or Roger Federer. I watch competitions they participate in with great pleasure. Pavlo Tymoshchenko became really famous, having taken part in the Olympic Games in 2008. He achieved such great success right after he had moved from the juvenile team to the adult team. He showed a good result in Peking, having taken 7th place in the final. I always dreamt of taking part in the Olympic Games, but I was very young when I got there the first time. It was so early for me. On the eve of the championship, I showed good results and even played for the national team. Our team set a goal for itself to take part in the qualifying round. It was my first sports season, when preparation for the competition took me so much time, effort and hard physical work. Having analysed his performance after the Olympic Games in Peking, Pavlo Tymoshchenko understood that he was very close to victory. Had he been a bit luckier, he would have won his first Olympic medal in 2008. It was my first Olympic Games and I didn't even expect to show high results. Although later I analysed it and understood my performance as an athlete was not so bad. There were interesting cases. I even didn't expect that it could happen with me. I was nervous and made several mistakes of organisational character, but as it turns out, I was close to victory, because athletes can really show their sports abilities and finesse at the Olympic Games. In addition to that, some of the sportsmen performed at the Olympic Games worse than they performed in other competitions. The good results shown by Pavlo at the Peking Olympic Games forced the athlete and his coach to think hard. The first experience of Pavlo participating in the Olympic Games showed that he had a great potential to become a true champion. Both he and his coach understood that they could count on Olympic medals. The main thing is to never give up. He achieved the highest result, which is making it to the most significant and prestigious sports competition in the world. Unfortunately, he did not win a medal. It came so easy to him that the athlete didn't need much time to restore his strength, and we continued to take part in competitions. Pavlo Tymoshchenko had high ambitions to compete in the Olympic Games for the second time in his sports career. After successful performances at these stages of the World Cup, his competitors started fearing him. But when Tymoshchenko took part in the competition held in London, he only took 23rd place. After the second Olympic Games, I asked myself, can I show high results at this competition? That I was very strong. But later on, I faced problems. I understood I could do nothing. I consistently failed. And I thought, is it possible for me to show good results at the Olympic Games? Having suffered a defeat at the London Olympic Games, the pentathlete understood. An athlete has to be not only a favourite of the competitions, but he also has to be in a good physical shape, have psychological stability, luck and mood, and many other factors that could influence on the result. The world today has accustomed to people winning millions of medals. We athletes try to follow the example of the outstanding sportsman Michael Phelps. Unfortunately, there are only 3 medals in the pentathlon, but 36 athletes participate in this competition. And believe me, 10 sportsmen for sure could be winners. There are lots of people who have titles of world championships and are many-time champions of many sports competitions, but they were not able to take even 3rd place at the Olympic Games, never mind 2nd place. But, for example, a Mexican athlete who had never been a prize winner succeeded in taking 3rd place. Pavlo Tymoshchenko finally stepped up on the pedestal of his dreams. On one hand, when he participated in the Olympic Games 2016, he had already held the title of world champion. On the other hand, a broken leg during training for competition was not ideal. He succeeded to get into shape due to his great desire and invaluable experience. He also dreams of one day winning the gold medal at the Olympic Games. Not that I dream, but I want to conquer the unconquerable top place. I have not yet won that many medals. I don't know why, but right now I don't want to think about that too much, because it is an absolutely senseless overload for my psyche. I always analyze my mistakes and try to figure out what exactly it was that I lacked to win a medal. When Pavlo Tymoshchenko will participate in the next Olympic Games, he will be almost 34 years old. Is that a lot for pentathletes or not? For lots of athletes, being 22 to 23 years old is a golden age. When they are older, they can't compete in a pentathlon because they are not able to cope with psychological processes in their mind. Someone overcomes this by listening to reason, while others do it based on their experience. Let's not make premature plans. I know that I will face other difficulties, new heights and new tasks that only I can overcome, reach and accomplish. If I succeed in doing so, then my golden age might come later, but not only when I am still at the ripe young age of 34. Together with Pavlo, his coach Yuri is also gaining new experience. He doesn't stop developing for a second. Both the athlete and his coach do not carry old baggage. They are constantly improving their skills together. We need to become interested in reading new scientific literature and watching a wide variety of videos. Sports technologies and various methods of athletic training are constantly changing. Of course, a sports coach should also improve his professional skills. If a coach doesn't change and stays in one place without developing his skills, I don't think that he will achieve the highest results possible. The Ukrainian national team won 11 various medals at the Olympic Games in Rio-de-Janeiro. Only 11 Ukrainian athletes returned home from Brazil as true heroes. It seemed as though long-lasting fame and glory was guaranteed for them. What is glory? These are just stages of glory. Nobody recognizes me, and they don't know me as a professional athlete. Sometimes some journalists ask me a lot of questions, but it happens very rarely. Maybe it doesn't coincide with my schedule, but I can say they do not overburden me to the point that I get tired of them. It happens because pentathlon is not such a popular form of sport. Ukrainian TV channels do not broadcast competitions in pentathlon, and one rarely sees a report about this sport in sports news. Speaking the truth, there are very few sports news broadcasts in Ukraine. The International Sports Federation tries to take measures to popularize pentathlon. When I hear that pentathlon is not popular and not spectacular and a problematic form of sport, I start feeling that I am the same. Although I would like pentathlon to become more popular, this is one of my cherished desires or dreams. I like the way Ole Bjorndalen said in one of his interviews he gave at the beginning of his career in a film. I would like to make the biathlon more popular. When he started his career in the early 1990s, biathlon was not popular, so I understand that I am not at the beginning of my career, but I would nevertheless like pentathlon to become a highly popular form of sport. Pavlo Tymoshchenko tells very warmingly not only about his sports success, but also about his main achievements and victories in life overall. He has a happy family and lovely daughter. Answering journalist questions, would he like his daughter to also become a pentathlete, he responded that he doesn't set such a task for himself. I would never force her in any case, but recently I noticed, not I, rather my wife, that our daughter is more physically active than people of the same age. This is a genetic peculiarity. To get into professional sport is one thing, and to be engaged in any form of sport constantly is another thing altogether. The latter is much more difficult. Because of his age, Pavlo Tymoshchenko is starting to think what he will do after calling it quits in his professional career. His father chose coaching at the necessary time, so Pavlo doesn't rule out that he will also become a sports coach after his career as an athlete ends.